Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Feed Me Pixels review and recommendation series. I'm your host today, Larry the Chupacabra, and today we're going to take a look at the game from none other than Zero Punctuation's Yahtzee Croshaw called The Consuming Shadow, which is a procedurally generated horror game, or survival horror game mixed with a little bit of adventure, that takes you through a modern-day England where a mysterious Lovecraftian monster is invading the land, and only you can try to unravel this mystery within about 60 hours so that the world doesn't end and you can seal the rift that's allowing this demonic creature to consume the world. So the best way to describe the gameplay of Consuming Shadow is probably the darkest, most Cthulhian Lovecraftian road trip that you could possibly imagine as a out-of-work noir detective who just happened to throw in with the local Ministry of Occultism that's based out of London. So your mission, if you choose to accept it, and all the crazy insanity that goes along with it, and trying not to shoot yourself, and no, I'm not just making that up, that is a core gameplay mechanic, is you have to go from town to town, gathering and maintaining your small cache of supplies, namely bullets, medicine, and illegal drugs so that you don't go insane, which will then allow you to cast the various myriad of illegal strange magics that happen to be pouring into our cosmos from the aethers beyond, and you have to go through each of these towns and try to find the local haven of cultists or weird otherworldly creatures that are sprouting from the townsfolk, and try to figure out what myriad of gods and maybe their enemies or housemates or second brother twice removed from a fourth cousin are trying to get into this world, and you have to figure out what their associated runes are in order to craft a banishment ritual and end up inside of Stonehenge within 60 hours and try to close the gaping hole in space and time before Cthulhu comes through and decides that all of our delicious insides go well over tapioca pudding. I mean, I don't know about you, but I prefer it when my insides stay on the inside of my body. So that's the broad strokes of what Consuming Shadows is all about, but what this really boils down to is you have to manage your small pool of resources while you go dungeon crawling from town to town. They can either be a friendly town where you can get help and resources like bullets and other items to buff your character, or you can find a scary murdery dungeon that can be full of different monsters that float and spew different bugs and critters and gases and acids, or they can be full of weird cultists that try to cast magic at you that stab you with otherworldly spikes. And throughout these whole procedurally generated areas, you'll find random bits of items, clues as to what gods or demons or creatures are attempting to invade the world, along with what magics they might have brought with them, in order to try and close the rift, or at the very least try to figure out what's going on. And you can use a mixture of both bashing things with your hands, guns with bullets that you have to use very sparingly, and also magic in order to get through this world while also desperately trying not to go insane. It's a whole big down-to-the-wire mission that is all about trying to manage your resources and time so that the world doesn't end before you get to Stonehenge and close the rift with your own bare brains and magic. And a lot of different things can go wrong, so if you die a couple of times, don't worry about it, because as you play along through the game, you get different levels that allow you to put talent points into various birth stars or constellations so that you can improve your health stats, the sanity loss that you have throughout the game, or even buff your damage or your chances to pick various locks that you find inside of the dungeons. There's a lot of different challenge modes, different side questing sort of items and achievements that you can get that really provide a lot of replayability, even if you're just trying desperately to get to the end of the game for the first time, that you can unlock different things like daily challenges. The gameplay itself plays pretty well. I didn't run into too many issues, although I did find that it can sometimes suffer from performance issues while playing on AMD systems, but didn't have a single issue while playing on my NVIDIA laptop. And besides that, the only issues that I ran into was that a few of the different in-game mechanics can be just a little bit confusing, and I think some of that is actually intentional, like when you use some of the in-game illegal drugs to boost your sanity. They don't tell you that sometimes they don't run out at a regular rate, they just kind of fall off randomly, and you're stuck in the middle of a dungeon needing to use magic, and without your sanity, you can't form 2 syllables in your head, let alone the magical runes of Quathoth, in order to seal a banishment ritual and prevent a demon god from entering our world. So aside from those 2 issues, it plays pretty well, and I had a lot of fun with this. So the next component that we're going to look at is the story, and Consuming Shadows doesn't really have a huge in-depth story that you're led through, but it does have a lot of hinted story pieces that you can slowly piece together about this mysterious world that you find yourself in and the different gods that could possibly be invading it, including the gods of pain, lust, hatred, disease, all sorts of various creatures that might want to invade the world. And they also have a whole lot of the Lovecraftian references, which is something that you can find in a lot of Yahtzee Crowshaw's games. And if you really want to find out more about the story that's in this game, you're gonna have to go and investigate what's known as the Chizo mythos, which is a giant universe of games that has been built up slowly over time as Yahtzee Crowshaw has developed games throughout his entire life, I believe as far back as when he was aged 12. But aside from the various sort of implied references from some of his other games, this game does a really great job of building atmosphere, making you feel like the world is ending, and really pushing you to get as far as you can, as fast as you can, before the world ends or you go insane. Now, aside from the story, you've got the graphics, and to be honest with you, the graphics of the Consuming Shadow really don't break the bank, but as a procedurally generated roguelike, that's not always necessary, especially when it all works together to create an atmosphere of foreboding doom and evil invasions into our human realm by various creatures that are both unnatural and don't necessarily make sense to the human psyche. So the whole game's graphics are basically outlines, stencil cutouts, various shadowy figures moving about. It's really just something that you could put together probably over the course of a couple weekends, and it isn't exactly extraneous, but put together into a neatly controlled package, it does a really good job of conveying the message that the world is ending, everything's going to hell in a handbasket, and you've just got to try to scrape it by and to barely survive in order to save the world, and also your family who's waiting for you at home, being nibbled by an evil grandmother. The graphics are pretty good, and this is about the level of graphics that I've come to expect from a lot of really nicely done procedurally generated games, and that's not really the thing that's trying to sell this game. And the last thing that we're going to talk about here are the sounds, and the sounds are all pretty standard. They all sound like they should. All the enemies have unique sounds, like as they squirm and they squawk and they belch and they barf and they queef and they sort of spit everywhere. They all have their own unique characteristics that can let you almost immediately identify them as you enter a new and strange and difficult to see room. So the whole sort of sound design that revolves around Consuming Shadows is very on par and doesn't leave me wanting for anything from the forbidding music and the very strange sort of creepy sounds that everything makes. It's a really nice package, and even the different random events that you can encounter all have their own sets of unique sounds so that you always feel like you're immersed in a world that's about to, well, be on the cusp of a demonic invasion and ending, as we all get enslaved to the minds and tentacles of our Lord Cthulhu. I mean, what's not to love, right? So the verdict then for Consuming Shadows is, if you're really a fan of sort of like kind of noirish, procedurally generated, Lovecraftian horror survival games, then Consuming Shadows is definitely the game for you, and you'll find a lot of replayability with a lot of different sorts of weapon combinations, spell combinations, talent combinations, and other different challenge modes that'll keep you coming back over and over again in a game that's not very taxing on your computer and can be played by pretty much everybody who has a semi-modern machine, and it's a lot of fun, and it's not very expensive. It's only $10, that's US dollars, and for the Steam release, it even got another free sort of expansion pack to it that added a whole bunch of new game modes and challenge modes, and even a daily challenge that runs off of a procedurally generated seed, so you can compete with your friends from across the globe to see who can stop the end of the world from coming the fastest, or even who just barely manages to survive. So I would definitely recommend this, and I've been your host, Larry the Chupacabra. Thanks for joining us, ladies and gentlemen, for another Feed Me Pixels review and recommendations video. If you enjoyed this, make sure you subscribe and check out some more stuff on feedmepixels.com, and also check out Feed Me Pixels live on twitch.tv. It's a whole lot of crazy, awesome fun, and I hope you guys will stick around and join us for some more. You can find the links to this game and other pertinent information in the description, along with a link to my own channel, Larry Chupacabra, or the Chupacabra's Lair, where I do a whole lot of different Let's Plays, reviews, first looks, and indie first gamification on early access type videos. So come on over and check me out if you enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you guys and gals next time. So until then, toodaloo everybody.